I have watched the movie,
Wait!
even the hilariously named extended action cut,
Wait! Damn it.
and played a little bit of the game, which was fine, as far as I played it. I'm sure it's fine. But I wanted to read the book at some point, as it was supposed to be so much better than the movie. The way it is structured sounded weird to me at first, but now I read it and I can talk a bit about it. The way it's structured is pretty interesting though, and as I read the book, I found out that it is made in the same vein as a book about World War II survivors. It's a documentary of the war basically, the war against zombies. The book is segmented into 8 big chapters with several interviews in varying length. It describes the rise of the undead and how they conquered most of the world. The book first tries to find the origins of the zombie outbreak, which seemingly came out of
China.
and slowly but surely infested more and more of the area until it was almost too late. The book paints a pretty interesting picture of what occurred. The government first tried to cover up the situation, while organ trade, human trafficking and emigration spread the virus further. Infections are soon reported all over the world, and the Mossad agent, for example, explains Israel was making plans for the case that something like this would actually happen, in a segment which is referenced in the movie as well. It says that for every threat that Israel is probably facing, they take 10 agents and explain them the situation. Even if it's completely unlikely, at least one of the agents has to make plans for the possibility that something like that might occur. The agent who is interviewed is this man. The book also explains that most countries are working on plans to survive this attack. The US is first trying to react to every case of an outbreak by sending special forces, which take out the undead. Russia is trying to extinct the zombies and start to decimate its own troops, to force the troops to keep killing potential threats, as they are starting to break down. There's also someone selling a placebo vaccine, but everything just keeps going downhill. Eventually a scientist is proposing a plan: build up locations with fortifications and enough resources to survive on locations which zombies can't reach easily. There are even other survivors supposed to be at certain spots, but keeping them alive is only secondary. They are supposed to be bait in the first place, to lure the zombies away from the important people like politicians, scientists and military, who are better secured. We also see the military failing over and over again. The weapons are ineffective or lead to a worsening situation, as they only maim the zombies. The tactics are not working on an undead army. An undead enemy without legs keeps crawling on the ground and is harder to spot and harder to hit in the head, and the endless flood of the undead overwhelm the soldiers. The international situation also worsens. Nuclear strikes between nations occur. Most nations are taking terrible losses. Eventually humanity fights back though. Ordinary people fight for their lives, and the battle at a university leads to new hope. The US military changes its tactics and start to fight in tactics used in the Napoleonic Wars, which proved to be effective. Some nations also use other tactics, and the everyday life in general changes dramatically. Not only humans have changed though, animals have changed as well. Domestic animals have become wild again and roam the empty streets and the wilderness, posing another threat for humanity, which slowly comes back to its previous state, including governments, oppression and expansion of territory. I talked a bit in general about the plot now, but I won't spoil anything more. The reason: I liked the book very much, and you should read it too if you like to read, especially horror literature. It's written rather well, and the accounts of the people asked feel very different and tell interesting, often heartbreaking stories. There's that one story about a tank column fighting at a bridge while refugees are around them, which is actually quite tragic. The Changing World is an interesting one, and the book really tries to paint a realistic picture of the zombie world war. It also dives into aspects which are very little explored in other media. I, for example, never thought about organ transplants as a source for a zombie outbreak, but it makes sense. It feels authentic and sometimes even smartly written, which is pretty surprising for a zombie story, to be honest. I wouldn't have thought it would work so well in a novel. But it does, and it works so much better than another zombie novel I'm currently reading and probably will review in the future. In a quite long review, I would guess. Funny side note though, there was a weekend on which I read a chapter from World War Z and one from the other zombie book, and both had an Adam Sandler reference in it. Hilarious. World War Z is a fine book. I pretty much enjoyed it. You can pick it up anytime and just read a couple of interviews and later return to it, without too big of a break in the story, as these are separate short stories basically, all taking place in World War Z. It's well written and quite well thought through, and doesn't overstay its welcome. World War Z, the book, gets a 8 out of 10. Oh, it's also better than Max Brooks' other book, about a commune facing a Sasquatch threat. But that just is a side note. That Sasquatch book is called Devolved or Devolution or something like that. Was not that good. But I might take a look at the Zombie Survival Guide at some point.